everyone. Welcome to Zonan Canada. I'm your host, Jesse Betteridge. This, of course, is a podcast focusing on the connections between anime and Canadian media. And joining me once again, after a little bit of a hiatus, is Karl Olson. Karl, how are you doing? What's up with you?
I'm doing all right. I am just enjoying my new laptop that I purchased recently, and have otherwise been taking it easy. Got some new music on deck, probably for the end of the year. But good stuff. I am just being really lazy and not watching anything current.
Nothing current at all.
I'm just like, forget it. I'm just gonna nostalgia bomb on Retro Crush. Like they added gravitation, which is bad. It's like that's just junk food, but I don't care. It's junk food that helped me become the anime nerd I am today. So every once in a while, just pop that up on the mobile phone.
I think people will be if they haven't seen Gravitation, I think they'll be genuinely surprised at it if they go back and watch it now. That it's
people don't remember how goofy that show is. It is a very comedic show, and in like a genuinely well timed gag manga way, and nothing about the rest of the image of the show suggests that.
And they've added a bunch of other stuff on Retro Crush. I saw.
It's loaded. It's
Stelvia is on there now.
I watched a bit of that too.
Nadesco.
Yeah, it all looks great too.
Yeah.
That's the part that kills me. Is just for a while, it's some of this stuff was circulating on other legit service. Some of this, I don't know, these specifically, maybe not. But there's a bunch of stuff that's free on Tubi, or Tubi, and it looks awful. It's just the worst encoding in the universe. Everything on Retro Crush looks pretty good, and the few things that they have had trouble, they've gone back and fixed. There were some issues with their Dear Brother encodes that they went back and cleaned up. It was awesome while they were up, because they just completely glitched out and looked like digital decimation style art, glitch art.
They've added Dirty Pair. It is just the DVD version, because Right Stuff is currently doing a Kickstarter to get a dub produced for the high definition masters that they want to put out as a Blu-ray. This apparently was not possible before, because this is one of those situations where the music and effects track wasn't available. But they magically found it, which seems to be a bit of a trend these days, because people are actually looking properly now. And we're getting
people are just being shamed into doing their job right. And also when people are looking for other things, there's a real sense of camaraderie with the modern, the more independent anime distributors. I don't know, maybe they're all just bribing archivists finally. Maybe that was the whole thing, is you were always supposed to slip them $20.
As I mentioned a couple episodes ago, a lot of the time they hide behind this excuse that there was a warehouse fire or something that's making those masters permanently inaccessible. But I think the layers of bullshit are being peeled off now, and
I think what it's welling down to is yes, there have been some major warehouse fires in Hollywood. However, what's very obvious is the accounting of what's in the warehouse is garbage. So at any given point, they may have moved to a third tertiary location and then some, until you're that hasn't been in that archive for 20 years. It's been in this one.
I am tempted to support that Dirty Pair Blu-ray Kickstarter and get the set with the series and the movies and the OVAs, but ordering from Canada means that you're gonna have to deal with some pretty nasty shipping on that, on top of a very high price tag to begin with. So I'm probably just going to be waiting till 2023 when I can get that set for still a high price off of Right Stuff, but can combine it with a bunch of other stuff and get free shipping.
You can get the order up. I'm back and forth on do I order the Kodocha pre-order and the Ava, and do I do a bunch of pre-orders, or do I admit to myself that I have Blu-rays sitting on my shelf that I have unwrapped but I have not watched, so it's hard to justify. And also,
hey, just wait until someone's library gets purged from one of these services and a whole bunch of titles go missing. It's probably going to happen eventually, and then you're going to be glad that you have some of those titles handy to watch.
I mean, with some of these, it's just this will be finally a good version of it to have. It's Eva, like I've got a copy of my parents, and it's for platinums, they're fine. Stuff like Kadocha, it's like, yeah, I have the old Funimation DVDs, having that all on SD Blu-ray, and more importantly, the back half we never got because of
and the restored
possible
music.
licensing nightmare stuff. Oh yes, and of course the restored music. Rotten hell, Johnny.
Yeah.
I shouldn't, but I will. It's funny because it's true.
He was a terrible person. Like,
yeah,
drag him. Apparently that, hopefully, this, the death of Johnny Girigawa has also, lowered the price of that first Inuyasha opening, for anyone who might stream it in the future, which I hope maybe happens in Canada eventually. Because we're still just stuck with, whatever Netflix has. I'll get into that a little later. While we're just on the topic of Retro Crush, one other thing. They did also add another title. This isn't... I don't think it actually does qualify as retro. It's only from 2011, but it's called...
Jesse, it has to now. Sorry, that's 10 years old.
15 years is like the line for retro in my mind. Okay. It's debatable.
Anime years are like decades.
Okay. Fair enough. Anyway, legitimate retro title, or Lagrange Flower of Rene, which is this Yuri Mecha series from 2011. Notably, this was one of the titles that Viz Media held the rights to for most of last decade and did not make available streaming anywhere in Canada ever until they lost the rights about 2 or 3 years ago. Now it's resurfaced on a service we can actually watch. So
yeah,
there you go. I've heard good things about it, so I might check it out myself.
I saw it there on the service myself, and I was all like, one, remember Mecha series? Remember when we used to get those, semi-regularly instead of Isekai?
And
then two, I was all like, yeah, Jesus.
We get like maybe 3 or 4 a year at this point out of like almost 200 shows. So
yeah. It's like by ratio, you think we should just be awash in them, but it's
all the guys who know how to draw the robots, they're retiring or dying. So and they're not. It's not being passed on. So
well, it's not even that. It's that if you can draw the robots, go work in video games and make many multiples the money.
Yeah.
Draw robots and starve, or it's sad because it's true. But yeah, no, I've been really happy with Retro Crush, and it's also just awesome to like with the live stream, the linear, to just like flip something on at like 2 a.m. It's like just running blue sub uncut.
To be fair, when you flip it on, they're usually playing the Street Fighter animated series.
This is true.
Which is like,
they play other things.
Which is like, I can appreciate that as a joke, but like, is it still a joke when you're playing it that frequently?
I do think there's other things I'd like to see them cycle on. But like I said, it is nice to sort of, it's sort of like occasionally both them and Con TV Anime run different versions of Boogie Bop Phantom.
Yeah.
Like different versions of the subtitles or different ways they're subtitled. Which is like, again, just fantastic to like flip on and you're like, oh, it's just this classic that, aesthetically, I mean, again, like visually, they don't do that style of muted. It'd be so much easier to do that now. And like, nah, everything looks blown out.
So if you haven't noticed yet, we don't have a particular focus on this episode. We're just going to be talking about, just rounding up specific news items because it's been a while since we've just had an open-ended episode where we just kind of talk about what's been going on. So
what we've been doing, in terms of enjoying media in Canada.
Yeah. So, before we kind of jump into things, I did have to acknowledge one thing. Back in episode 79, I had Mike Toole on, and we discussed we discussed the history of Osamu Tezuka anime that was dubbed in Canada, and I am so sorry, folks. I missed one.
You blew it.
I blew it. I let everyone down. I did miss one. So the title I missed, and I knew this existed, so I can't believe I overlooked it. It was a preschooler targeted show from 2014 called Little Astro Boy. It ran for a total of 8 11-minute episodes. So it was produced by Tezuka Productions and Yomiuri TV in Japan, where it aired in Japan. And they produced an English dub with Ocean Studios. Bunch of people, names you'll probably recognize were in there. Chantel Strand, Shannon Chan Kent, friend of the show Cole Howard, and a few others lent their voices. You can find this show on YouTube if you want to check it out. There's not a whole lot of it. Most interestingly, the only other country where this show aired, apart from Japan, and this is where the English dub was run, was in Nigeria. It ran on the Nigerian broadcaster Channels TV. And it was practically a co-production, because they actually had some animators from Nigeria go to Japan and work on it. Interesting little curiosity there, a little Astro Boy. Again, on YouTube if you do want to check that one out. And I'm thinking to myself, I had Mike back on the show again. I could have mentioned that when he was here and done a segment, but oh well, it's done. In other dub news, in this hellscape where all our treasured and well remembered Vancouver dubs are being dubbed over for various reasons, we learned just a few weeks ago that one of the most important and influential anime series of all time is getting a new dub for the first time in English, produced in Vancouver, and it's Future Boy Conan. G-Kids is finally putting out the box set for that series in November. And yeah, it is a full-fledged Ocean Studios dub with a Vancouver cast. This was likely not funded by G-Kids itself. It looked like it was the result of government initiatives in Japan, specifically an organization called JLOD. I don't know if they're connected to Cool Japan. I think they're a separate thing, but it kind of emerged from that same bureaucratic framework that we all know and love.
Gotta love stuff being done in Canada on the basis of tax credits, even if they're not Canadian tax credits.
See, that's the thing. I don't know if they're even saving money by sending these projects to Canada, but I think that a lot of these sort of government initiatives in Japan and studios that are kind of running things from there, mm-hmm. I think they're just used to sending things to Canada and they do it out of habit. Like I think that's why World Trigger was sent to Ocean, because it was Toei handling that themselves. But in any case, I am looking forward to this dub, and I'm looking forward to owning that show finally, because this is the first time it has ever been available widely and fully in English. Yeah. And that's just crazy because it's the first TV series directed by Hayao Miyazaki. So, you'd think that it would be more widely available, but apparently there have been weird rights issues with it. So that happens.
So I'm always glad to see things get out of rights hell, and obviously Future Boy Conan being tremendously influential. Like so much of Future Boy Conan's DNAs and things like Nadia, which then, basically gets big concepts from that get reused by Anno from himself for Eva, and so on and so forth. Like the genetics is deep in anime back to Future Boy Conan. So the fact that it has been missing from the English speaking world in some ways has been a lost signifier in our lexicon. And I think as we see that out there, there's going to be a bunch of people spotting stuff and being like, oh, that was this.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure many of us have heard how, Rebecca Sugar and Ian Jones Quarty, OKKO
very much.
and Steven Universe directly influenced by it. Like this is a title that's been taken for granted by animators and in its home country for so long, and now you're kind of going to get that context directly, which is fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. It's no longer going to be like an animator's animation. It will be in everybody's animation finally.
Yeah. In other dub news, the new Gintama movie is coming out, and there was a lot of speculation about what was going to happen with the dub for that film, because we have now gone through a few different dub casts for Gintama, and as many may know, the most popular cast by far was the Vancouver cast that was used for their dub of season 3. So the movie, which is being put out by 11 Arts, is not getting a Vancouver-produced dub. However, the three principal actors from that dub, Michael Dangerfield, who's Gintoki, Cole Howard, who's Shinpachi, and Jocelyn Lowen, who's Kagura, will be reprising their roles. And I think it is otherwise going to be a LA dub. So, yeah, that's a win, I guess.
It's one of these things where at some point here, certainly as the past couple of years have shown us, the idea that dubs need to be like, they're going to happen in this studio, in this place, and so on and so forth. There has been a lot of things that have been able to get done because we now have entire workflows built around the idea that people don't have to be in a place to do this, and that this is particularly of things in entertainment that get done. This is a particularly amenable to remote, flexible things. So if there's dream casts that people are going to be able to put together, that I think will ultimately make everyone a little happier and should hopefully mean everybody has more work, because you can be like, this person can jump on an LA dub and they're in Vancouver. This person can jump and, vice versa. There's just a lot of opportunities there that I think are positive. I mean, seeing, and it's very clear that like it's provided a pathway for people who were clearly just passionate fans to like really make a business out of this. And when you see that sort of synergistically in discotheque being hobbyists turning that into a business, who are then hiring sound cadence to do dubs, who are hobbyists turning that into a business, like I can't help but just smile. I'm very happy to see it.
It's I mean, the downside, of course, is that being able to easily put those favorite actors into projects will decrease the incentive to actually send the projects to Canadian studios. But I mean, this is just the world we live in, so it is what it is. If anyone is wondering, the Gintama movie will be playing in Canadian theaters. 11 Arts has been very good with that. They got
nice.
They got Shirobako out in theaters, and that was I went to go see that. I was the only person in the theater. First time in my life. It was an experience. And I think Gintama's
that's a safe way to see it.
Yeah. And
I went out to a movie and it was perfectly fine.
Yes. And I expect the situation will be a little different with Gintama, because it is a much more popular series. But there you go. Gintama playing in Canadian theaters with your favorite Canadian actors.
There you go.
Nothing to complain about there. One other thing I wanted to bring up. I've actually been wanting to mention this on the show for a while, but I just haven't had an opportunity, is that there are now J-dramas running on CBC Gem. Or rather, there are 2 J-dramas that they added to tie in with the Tokyo Summer Olympics, which, a bit of a strange choice, because you'd think they'd go with the most easy-to-license content for something like that. Whereas J-dramas are notoriously difficult to license a lot of the time. But they picked up 2. They picked up the Japanese version of Suits, and they also picked up...
It's the weirdest thing to see, by the way. I watched an episode of that, and I'm just like...
Yeah.
They made a Japanese version of a USA Network dramedy.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's from what I've seen, it is not very good. I don't think I can recommend that one.
It's so
beyond
weird.
the curiosity of seeing how
watch
they
one.
do it. Yeah.
Watch one just so that CBC gets the feedback that like, yeah, we can put this up. Maybe not this one. But generally.
What I do recommend is the other drama that they picked up called Miracles. So it's a really fun series about this college instructor who is very clearly on the autism spectrum, and he's very obsessed with animals, and he uses that as a way to sort of navigate his social relationships, and a lot of it is him coming out of his shell and reaching out to other people. In a lot of ways, I found it's it is very much a J-drama in the ways you'd expect it to be, but I thought it was a lot of fun, really engaging. And it stars Issei Takahashi, who, well, I should point out I'm pretty sure he's not on the autism spectrum, so I think that decision might rub some people the wrong way. But he is quite delightful and engaging in the series. I thought it was also worth noting that this actor, who is best known as the voice of Seiji from Whisper of the Heart, back the original Studio Ghibli film. He also plays Rohan Kishibe in the new live-action Thus Spoke Rohan Kishibe J-drama that's running in Japan right now, which is, of course, a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure spin-off. So that means that Miracles is technically JoJo's adjacent, too. So that's a reason to watch. And then, who knows, maybe if it does well, they'll get more stuff on CBC Gem starring Issei Takahashi. And I don't think they're actually going to get that.
What you're saying is the long con here is to get JoJo's on CBC.
I don't think that. Yeah, sure. Let's get JoJo's on CBC. That's a great idea. Actually, Netflix has it locked down now, pretty much. I think if it's going to show up anywhere, it's there. I don't know what's going to go on with that live action drama, but yeah, Netflix seems to be snatching up titles from Viz. I don't know about you, Carl. I think it seems like Viz is kind of they're kind of fallen out of anime distribution. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that.
I mean, it does feel weird to see how many of the things that they had gradually end up in other hands. Ones that they could have. I mean, Netflix, I get it. You can't. Netflix wants something, you're not winning that fight. They will spend a stupid amount of money on very questionable decisions. Not that that's related to recent news that's irrelevant to this podcast, but on the other hand, there's other things, titles that have sort of fallen out of their hands that I'm like, really? It would have seemed like it would be easy to hang on to if you cared. So, which is great. I'm actually happy that, they maybe don't have Honey and Clover, because like then I can just, again, it's streaming everywhere now. It's available in Canada. You turn on Con TV and they're running just hours of Honey and Clover. What a shame. But it does seem like they're really doubling down and focusing on manga, which to be fair is a pro move. Jump Plus seems to be tremendously popular. Manga Plus seems to be tremendously popular. Like those services are doing very well. People are, like the understanding I've gotten from people who are in the manga industry, who I am acquainted with on Twitter and IRL, is that it's just been going gangbusters during the pandemic, to the point where they're really in these crunches of we ran our usual print run and then it sold out faster than we expected, and now there's supply chain issues. So rather than our usual turnaround on an extra print run, like all of this just in time production stuff is catching up with them.
If you're buying Chainsaw Man, don't miss a volume.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. That's great problems for Viz. Like they're fine with that because it means that they're making money hand over fist. And it's just they're currently limited on making even more money a bit. Though I'm sure a lot of people have been like, I can't get this volume. Well, I'm going to pick up a month of Jump Plus or something, which just turns into that's another ambient subscription, right?
Yeah.
So I can't blame them for backing out, especially when it's always been something they've kind of hemmed and hawed on, relative to companies that focus on it and really make it their passion. Like you just take a look at how a Right Stuff would subtitle something versus Viz in terms of just the level of effort in DVD subtibtils even 15 years ago.
And I mean, just in terms
that's kind of the story, isn't it? Like
just in terms of distribution, they would they relied on Hulu for so long for their distribution in North America, which has always been a huge problem in Canada because they would give exclusivity for titles to Hulu and then just not do anything about the Canadian market. This has been a huge problem over the last decade, and it seems to more or less be working itself out now as these Viz titles are kind of falling into other hands, showing up elsewhere. They're just not bothering to pin down stuff. Like they basically let Funimation have Megalobox. Netflix is getting JoJo's. Netflix is getting more Sailor Moon. They got the movie. They seem to be trying to get all of it piecemeal or piece by piece, if they can. And I have no doubt they will succeed in that eventually.
Yeah, there may be a lot of them having to like ask to why chunk by chunk. They may not be able to get that lock, stock, and barrel. It may be like, no, you're going to sign 7 different contracts.
Yeah,
you get one for each. But again, they're good for it. And gradually, I mean, I will say like Netflix does seem to be learning how the Japanese market works a bit more. I mean, they're still upset because they can't license things like just creator rights are so much stronger in Japan, but I think they're beginning to just settle and deal with it. Like, all right, I guess we can't just own this shit in perpetuity forever Disney style because that's not how this shit works.
Yeah.
But having it for right now is still, value generated, et cetera, whatever. And I imagine the ratios on value generated for anime are probably still pretty great, especially for licensed content.
In terms of this Viz stuff that we can't get, and again, I don't think they're going to be withdrawing. I don't think they're like dropping anime, but they're certainly stepping back from it considerably and not being that aggressive when it comes to stuff streaming or even on home video.
I mean, the second they were like, hey, we couldn't make Neon Alley work. The fact that they had, that they're like, well, then we'll just throw it over to Hulu. Like, as the streaming era has progressed, eventually this was going to be some degree of Viz throwing it over the wall to someone else. But if you're doing that, you're not really different at that point to other smaller anime distributors. who'd also do physicals and then throw streaming over the wall to other folks. And all of those other distributors are frankly just vastly more passionate about the space. Yeah. So, at what point do you just say like, hey, we've got our lane. Why are we putting energy into this?
Yeah. But there's one thing that Hulu still has locked down that they don't seem, no one is budging on, which is the rest of Inuyasha. We got those first 2 seasons on a whole bunch of services, but for some reason, it seems like Hulu just has the rest of it nailed down in the U.S., and that's keeping everyone else from having it. I don't know if it's because, Crave and Funimation and Crunchyroll, are they just not aware of the fact that, like, those seasons are not available in other countries and have never been? Like,
I don't know if it's, I'm sure people have brought it up to them. I just have a sneaking suspicion, given that there have been other people who have had trouble, other businesses that have had trouble with their Hulu contracts, that maybe it's under something particularly pernicious. Because remember, that's part of why Venture Brothers got like quasi-canned, is because there was no clear way for Adult Swim to back out of its Hulu contract for it, and they weren't going to give that streaming stuff to Disney. It was bad enough it was Fox and Disney, and like at this point where it was like very just plainly, you're helping a competitor, right?
Yeah. With the thing with Inuyasha,
but that's what I'm saying is like it may be under some sort of.
It was one of the.
Who knows what they signed for that?
It was one of the earliest titles that they negotiated with Hulu, so maybe they didn't even know what they were doing at that time. I don't know. This is speculation.
There's a possibility that they didn't realize what they signed.
Yeah. But I find it weird that like not even Netflix, like how global is Netflix really if they don't see like, oh, this major title is missing most of its seasons in Canada. We can't get it in the U.S. We'll just get it for that country. Like they don't. They don't get that specific.
With Netflix, it may be some goofy, the algorithm says we have enough of it.
Yeah.
The mindless black box says we're fine, so we will worship at the computer. And meanwhile, people are like, I'm going to cancel the Netflix subscription because this ain't doing nothing for me.
Yeah. I'd love to see Crave get Inuyasha because like it's like the most logical title for them. It has been over 1 year now since Sailor Moon dropped on Crave. And I mean, thankfully it's still there, but like what better start could you get for licensing titles? And that they've delivered nothing. It's
I mean, I'm going to say some of it may just be, current events throwing things into disarray, but it's also Crave, and they've always kind of had weird follow through. And Crave is another thing that I do wonder how it's going to fare long term, because I mean, you've got, a big chunk of some of the stuff that it had was stuff that would be on, what was originally CBS All Access, now Paramount Plus. And like, they're very clearly trying to push that specifically in Canada. So longer term, does that chunk of the Crave library carve away?
Yeah. I mean,
which does include technically some CanCon, Star Trek Lower Decks, animated in Vancouver, but in a union shop, mind you, the first one in Canada.
Right on.
Got to give credit where credit's due.
Yeah.
And Lord knows Canadian Animations needed it.
Sure does.
In a lot of its shops. Not all of them, but some of them for sure. There's, Crave is in a weird position because it's so much of its value is it's HBO and Showtime and a bunch of other American streaming stuff just kind of stapled together. And as those companies kind of start to say like, hey, we have to compete with Netflix on the world stage. We can't just keep selling them. We can't just keep doing this fast money stuff that is selling our future. At what point does that just sort of balkanize Crave beyond salvageability?
And I mean, as we kind of talked about in the long game, this might actually put CBC Gem in a stronger position than Crave, which is kind of funny to think about now. But we'll see what happens.
CBC is a more serious content producer in some ways than Crave is.
But Crave, critically for Crave, they have that HBO content, and Bell as a company can probably hold on to it as long as they want to.
They can hold on to it as long as they want to, unless, I guess this will now be Discovery Warner. And Discovery, and I'll keep in mind, Discovery Plus has been doing a bunch of ad push up here too. if Discovery Warner says, like, no, just like we're pushing Discovery Plus up here as its own thing, we're going to push HBO Max as a thing internationally, man, all bets are off. And again, this is not something that necessarily is going to result in less Canadian content. I mean, Discovery is built on tons of stuff that's being done up here in Canada for cheap. Tons of documentary programming and reality programming being cranked out for that up here. But
it's very hard to say how this is going to go in the long run. I think focusing on the short term for a lot of this streaming stuff is probably better, because you can actually predict what's going to happen. It's wildly unpredictable in the long term. Just going back to Crave in terms of their strategy of rolling out content, it is worth noting that just in this past week, they added a whole bunch of Bollywood content just out of nowhere. It wasn't even announced in advance. And for streaming services, a lot of the time, Bollywood is kind of considered a similar niche to anime. So they are, they're kind of they're getting their fingers in that stuff and getting it out there and trying to cover those bases in the way that most streaming services try to and have already done years in advance of Crave doing it.
And talk about streaming services that talk about a niche that has its own massive streaming service industry outside of the regular industry, just the way anime does, right? Like, there's tons of just Bollywood exclusive services, Bollywood exclusive over the top linear as well. So, and Lord knows Canada has the population to support it. So it's almost surprising that wasn't there in Crave from the jump.
Yeah, exactly. They are slow. They are very slow. I think there's a good chance we're going to see Crave jump on anime eventually, and I think it's important that they do. It is very important. But how long is it going to take them? I don't know. Tell them you want to see it. That's the best thing I can recommend. They have their little email address and phone number, whatever. Tell them. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know how to organize. Like, how do you get call people to action these days on social media? I don't even know. I'm too old for this.
Change.org petition. Hey, you're supporting a Canadian-based company, by the way, if you do that.
No, do not do a petition, please. Don't even try.
I know.
Getting anime on Crave or Adult Swim Canada, which that's another thing. Actually, before we get to that, there's another streaming player that's going to start running anime, and it's Disney Plus at long last. Not something I think anyone was looking forward to. But they're going to be adding a few titles, including Black Rock Shooter Downfall, Summertime Rendering, Tatami Time Machine Blues, which is a sequel to Tatami Galaxy, and Twisted Wonderland, which is the Disney Prince Bishi gacha game thing. That's,
some of those titles are like wild. Summertime Rendering. I mean, there's another thing that you would have thought maybe would be a Viz title, because of course it's ran on online Jump stuff, but I think it eventually made it to the main magazine.
No, it was just Jump Plus.
Just Jump Plus?
Yeah.
But did very well for them on Jump Plus.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like, it ran for hundreds of chapters. And I rather enjoyed it. I did not expect to, because it's not usually my lane, but it is really good. But that is not Disney friendly. So, it is brutal.
One critical thing here that has not been widely publicized is that in the presentation, if you watch the actual presentation where these were announced by Disney Plus Japan, they had the Disney Plus star.
So they're all
branding on them. So that means
something.
That in Japan and presumably in most other regions, including Canada, they will be on Disney Plus Star. But in the US, this means that they are likely going to be on Hulu. This might give us a hint of what Hulu's strategy for anime is going to be going forward. If it's going to be in lockstep with Disney Plus Star, which I got to say, I wasn't expecting that. I didn't think that even Disney Plus Star was going to get into anime, but that seems like it might be their strategy going forward. And it doesn't seem as strange when you think of it that way.
Well, I mean, it's Disney, and they always want to have like they have survived the past couple decades basically on aggressively acquiring IP. And that is a pretty big well of creative talent to not have really any solid handle on. And one that has certainly taken eyeballs and dollars away from them and turned around, and then they've influenced the people that they then hire to make stuff otherwise. Owl House is a lot of anime in it.
Yep.
And it's fantastic for it. But yeah, like I can see Disney just sort of being like, hey, writing's on the wall. You have to be in this loop for real, and in terms of being funding stuff and owning stuff. I wonder how comfortable that is for Disney too, because again, like this is not going to have, haha, we own this forever kind of contracts on it, or they're going to be a lot harder for them to do with those creatives. But on the other hand, otherwise you're kind of surrendering that audience to Sony.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll see how we'll see how this plays out, because I mean, Disney Plus is probably the one streaming platform I just don't want at all, even if someone else is paying for it for me. So
yeah,
as we've seen with Amazon, even just having all the money in the world doesn't mean that you're gonna, dominate in this market. You have to adapt. Even if you adapt very messily, and I have a feeling a Disney Plus star is not going to do that so well. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Like I said, they've certainly they're paying for some top shelf, interesting stuff. It's the kind of stuff that will get coverage and attention. Assuming quality execution. Like I have very little worries about something that's spun off of Toonami Galaxy. Probably should be built well. But this has been a year that has shown anime struggle with some baseline quality of animation, and in ways that you can't just say like, well, it's because things have changed up. It's like everybody's things have changed up. That's not the problem. So yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting. But like I said, to me, the part of the reason why I can see them doing it is because Sony is now they're going to be kind of they're not even like the 800-pound gorilla in the room. They are the 10-ton King Kong in the room.
They're multiple gorillas duct taped together very well.
They're like a frigging getter of gorillas.
Yeah. So Funimation, almost certainly going to be absorbing Crunchyroll. Like I can't see it playing out any other way, because that's what's been going on in other regions. This is what happened in Australia. Funimation absorbed Anime Lab. They basically just had people import their accounts into Funimation and released a really condescending kind of trailer communicating this to people. And I think their platform is probably just designed to do that, basically. So
I
think Wakanim is probably next. Wakanim is probably next.
I can see them maybe leaving the French language stuff for last, but like to me, yeah, I mean, especially because like there was a lot of back and forth with nothing solid, but in terms of different people who are industry savvy saying like that price tag includes the technology, and other people who are also in the loop saying like I can't because that's what's underpinning HBO Max, and back and forth on that. But to me, it would never make any sense for Funimation to pick up Crunchyroll for the IT, because one, they fired a bunch of it in rolling things together for just even back in the Churn Media days, and then certainly as people were platforms were borrowed and IP used to underpin Max and stuff. Meanwhile, the whole reason Funimation was probably bought by Sony was because Sony was providing Funimation with the streaming platform.
That's how it started. That's the little domino that got flicked to set all this off.
The domino that gets flicked here is Funimation stops building their own IP and just licenses a turnkey solution from Sony.
Yeah.
Next domino, Sony realizes Funimation is clowning Crackle in traffic.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, you want to just be part of the Sony family? And they're like, yeah, sure. So, and then of course that gives them all the relevant, like those things just keep rolling forward.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, and it's fine. I think it's part of why I felt like so out of trying to like look at anything this season is just resigning myself to the inevitable. Like, you're gonna just have a Funimation subscription. Virtually everything's gonna be on Funimation except for like a handful of things on other platforms.
Notably, when Funimation absorbed Anime Lab, it took all the content with it except one title, Interspecies Reviewers, which Anime Lab was famously the only Anglo service that was providing that, and they shut that down. And also, apparently, Anime Lab was a much superior platform in terms of the quality to Funimation.
Yeah, I've heard back and forth. I don't think anybody's happy with Funimation or Crunchyroll consistently.
See, this is the thing, is that you hear so many, when Sony bought Crunchyroll to, and made it clear they're going to merge it with Funimation, everyone has been, so many people have been decrying what this means for competition. And it's just like, what competition? Like, Crunchyroll and Funimation, when they were separate companies, they were competitive like gas stations are competitive. Like,
it's true.
If anything, they were in a contest to see who could provide the worst service. Crunchyroll finally adds their download feature for downloading on, and so you can watch on
data off,
with data off. But they put it on a higher tier, so Funimation puts theirs on a higher tier too. It's just like, what the, if anything, actually Funimation just implemented a whole bunch of improvements on, if you go to Funimation.com on the website, they actually enhanced the player. It's much better now. Apparently iOS has gotten a big upgrade that's fixed a lot of the problems. So now that they have no competition or less competition and have just absorbed all the other companies, now they're fixing their shit.
Well, they're like, hey, we better fix all this stuff before people realize, for old school titles, people can load up Retro Crush's stuff, and it works pretty nice.
Yep.
It's, I don't know, man. And it's also, I mean, the issue of competition is definitely not one in terms of consumer availability. I do wonder if this is going to be like the squeeze that puts things over the top for anime production, because where previously, Funimation and Crunchyroll might have fought over something and bid it up a bit. I guess you're hoping that Netflix and Disney fills that void? ? I don't know.
Sucks,
man. I just feel like, who's going to really lose in that is the person who's like living in an animator dormitory.
Yep.
That that the only reason they're surviving is because they have a Patreon. And I think that's pretty, it's very bleak to look at like these people who are in those roles and be like, man, most of them probably would eat better. Just, certainly if they could pivot to games, but just like doing Dojin and having a Patreon, they'd probably be a personal Patreon. They'd probably be doing as well or better when you look at these numbers for like what they're getting for a series. And I'm like, that's,
and I mean, I hate
that's not sustainable over the long term. And this whole Funimation Crunchyroll merger does not provide any indication that that'll be fixed. I mean, you want to get really in the nitty gritty. Cloverworks is a Sony subsidiary. Cloverworks, of course, famously imploded during Wonder Egg.
Yeah.
With, cuts having to go overseas to fan artists. I don't see this merger suddenly being an infusion of cash and, more importantly, just breathing room, time frame to avoid that.
Yeah,
that's deeper and more structural.
I mean, there's a lot of people who get into this issue much deeper than I do,
sure.
Or that we do on this show. I don't. There's no simple solution to this, unfortunately.
No.
It's so baked into the industry that even for these giant companies to be, buying things up or injecting all this money in, it's not realistic for even to expect even them to address it in a way that isn't like a Band-Aid. Yeah. It sucks.
Hell world.
Yeah. I hope change does come, but it has to come from within Japan, really.
But hey, you know what? Some places seem to be doing good work. And I have a sneaking suspicion these issues aren't something maybe that are there with the new Blade Runner, where are we getting that? We getting Blade Runner?
So we are getting Blade Runner, Black Lotus. So it is coming. It's going to be on Crunchyroll, and it's going to be airing on Adult Swim Canada. This has been confirmed for quite a while. It still hasn't been confirmed exactly when it's going to be airing in Canada, but in the U.S., it has been confirmed for midnight November 13th. And
God, it'd be nice if that lined up.
Given that Warner has been pushing this, I think, harder than any other anime that they have ever run on Adult Swim.
Because they own the Blade Runner IP.
Yeah, I can't imagine that it's not going to simulcast here. So we're probably going to be seeing it exact time, exact date as the U.S. broadcast. There's maybe a tiny chance that they will, pull the same thing they did with season 2 of Game Seto and run it on Sundays instead, because they don't run anything of real value on Saturday nights right now. But I'm pretty sure they're going to simulcast it, and they're going to probably push it along with, their DC DTVs that they do run at that time, and maybe something else. And
so in other words, not like Fully Cooley Alton Progressive, and not like Fena.
That'd be odd. If I were a more optimistic person, I would predict that they're gonna.
I wish we could be that
they're
optimistic.
holding them back. They're holding those titles back to run them along with Blade Runner, but I don't think that's going to happen. Unfortunately, I really want to see that happen, but I don't think it is. And I mean, it's disappointing because this it would be a great opportunity to actually get a block going.
Holy crap! That's a really good hour and a half of cartoons, Blade Runner, Fena, and the Fully Cooley sequels.
And to clarify for anyone who's not sure or wonders why this stuff is running on Adult Swim Canada after they haven't run anime for so long, or why Blade Runner's running and that there's the possibility of Fena and Fully Cooley running, it's because these are Adult Swim co-productions, and they
own them.
They own them. They are part of the deal that Corus has with Adult Swim, with first run content that they or with original new content that they automatically have access to run as part of that deal. Fena Pirate Princess,
Seto, for the same reason.
Yeah,
it's the same stuff. Even it doesn't matter that it's anime and that there's an anime studio involved. For all intents and purposes, they're just Adult Swim shows that happen to be anime.
Yes. And for some reason they just said, "Oh, we're not going to air Fena."
It's so far. I mean, who knows? But
in a way, it makes sense that if they're running this anime content for the first time, they're going to start with Blade Runner because it's a recognizable title.
Best foot forward.
And again, it is something that Warner is really, really pushing. They're already running ads for it on Adult Swim. It would be a missed opportunity to not, use this as a way of getting something bigger. I am hoping that at the very least, when we get that new Shenmue series next year, and also Uzumaki, we might see those simulcast.
We'll have 2 hours of content. They have 2 hours. Can you imagine? Blade Runner, Shenmue, Fully Cooley sequels, Fena. There's your, and that being the launch of a Canadian Toonami.
Oh, yeah. I think it's important. Obviously, if Blade Runner does well, they'll also think, oh, this was successful because it's Blade Runner, not because it's anime. That's possible. I think it's still important to
they just
watch
start buying
the show.
Weird 3D shows.
It's probably important to support the show as it's running. If you get Adult Swim Canada, if you are a ratings household and have a Numeris box, absolutely make sure that you are watching Blade Runner when it runs every time on TV live. But notably, you have other ways of watching it now that actually might make your view count better. You can watch Adult Swim live or the programs on demand on the global app. So if you don't have cable, or someone who's willing to lend you their login, you can actually watch it on there. And they know who's watching it, or they know how many people are watching it on the app. They can actually track it directly. So that's a great way of supporting it, and we're supporting anime on TV if you watch Blade Runner that way, or any other future shows that they add in that manner. another way you can watch and support the show without cable is Stack TV, which is a streaming sub-channel on Amazon Prime Video that also gives you access to Adult Swim and a bunch of other Corus channels too. It's fairly pricey at $12.99 a month, but it does have a 30-day free trial, so you can at least use it to lend your eyeballs to the very crucial first few episodes of Blade Runner Black Lotus that will air. It also offers Adult Swim linear and on-demand, and I recommend watching both linear and on-demand regardless of how you're viewing it. And I know that, a lot of people don't really think anime running on TV is important anymore, or that it's kind of a ridiculous issue. And I'll admit, I think it's kind of become a niche interest for people like me, but it is something that a lot of people care about. So if you do care, you should definitely jump on this and
it's
make
also
your view
just
count.
It's also just another way to try and make sure more of this stuff is available. Otherwise, like there's not.
That's the other thing. Adult Swim Canada, even if you don't care about television broadcasts for anime in Canada, and it's still important because there's thousands or tens of thousands, maybe even more people who just leave Adult Swim Canada on the background to watch Family Guy reruns. Those people might, if the anime is running on the station, they might see anime. They would otherwise never check it out. Maybe it would pique their interest in a way that Netflix never could, or the Netflix algorithms never could.
And Netflix algorithms may specifically steer them away from.
Yeah, like my dad uses my Netflix account. I've looked at his profile a few times, and you wouldn't even know that they have anime based on his view, the way the algorithms deliver content to him. So I think that's the case for a lot of people. So that's TV is still important. But even if you think it isn't, even if you think it's a ridiculous issue and doesn't matter, note that because Fena's not running on TV in Canada, this is holding back the download to own options for the English dub on Google Play and Apple Store. And, so typically what happens is that those episodes will not be available until they broadcast in this market.
Yeah.
So, excuse me. And this means that the English dub for that show is not available legally right now. Yeah. And, it's important that it is. So that's
and especially
why
because physicals are always hard to get up here at the best of times. And, we were very lucky. Fully got physicals. Those sequels got physicals pretty quickly. I'm sure Blade Runner will get physicals sooner than later because it's Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Fena, man, that is an open question with all of the things really in motion right now.
Yeah.
There could, maybe because it was also Crunchyroll Code Pro and that's going to be a Funimation thing. Maybe that will make things easier. Maybe that will make things tremendously harder, in which case digital download to own becomes important to the market because it may be the only way you get to have a copy, full stop. This stuff needs to be in circulation. The more of it's in circulation, the more all the other stuff that your particular way of engaging with the medium leans on are likely to occur.
Exactly.
You're a physical person?
It is all connected.
It still hinges on this other stuff. Unfortunately, these are an interconnected series of messes, and that's what we call the media.
Exactly. And they want, even if you could argue that broadcast has no actual value in a practical
sense. That's not what, unfortunately, that's not what broadcast thinks.
That's not what they think.
You gotta live with it.
Yeah. You gotta play this game if you want it all to work properly. So that's what I say. If you do care about anime on TV, honestly, Fena Pirate Princess might be your hill to die on when it comes to this.
Honestly, I watched some of it on Crunchyroll and God bless that we get the subs up here at least. Yeah. That's something. Man, they really it is a gorgeous show.
It's great. Yeah.
IG really went all out on it, and it's a fun show.
Yeah.
It almost feels. My only caveat with it is thinking about that being on Adult Swim, and I'm like, man, that shit would have been on in the afternoons in the year 2000. That would have been come home from school stuff.
It's crazy.
Man, that's. It would have been so great. It's the kind of show that I'm like, that's the kind of show that gets people into the medium because you just have to recognize the work and quality of it. And that's why I'm so shocked we don't have a simulcast. And I'm hoping there's some sort of clever, hey, we're going to build off of Blade Runner and then we're going to start cycling these things in. But I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not looking to be disappointed.
Yeah. It's the one to push for if you want to push for anything, or maybe.
Well, at least for right now. I mean, until Shenmue comes up, and then maybe that's the next thing you needle on.
We'll see. I'm Fooly Cooly, of course. If they could get that on the air or go through the effort to get that on the air, that could lead to some good things as well.
Yeah.
If you do want to contact Adult Swim Canada, worth noting they don't have any social media whatsoever, and it's because they want to create this idea that they're synced with the U.S. Adult Swim Canada the U.S. Adult Swim, and that you just use their social media channels. But there's so much difference between the two networks that doesn't really. There's so many differences between the two versions of the station. It doesn't work. But you can email them. There's Adult Swim Canada at corusent.com. Note that the email address they have listed on their website at adultswim.ca is wrong. They have info at adultswimcanada.ca listed at the bottom. That email address does not exist. Don't use it. But if you want to get through to them, you can email them that way. I think Corus has a phone number for viewer relations. I don't know. You can try calling that if you want. I'm too old for that shit. But
I mean, it's the kind of thing where I'm sure whoever is manning that line or whatever person has to listen to those voicemails would be absolutely enjoy the break of their day of people standing for anime on Adult Swim Canada, in between olds probably being like, NCIS didn't work on the global level. So give them a break.
Man.
Yeah. Because it's probably manned by no older than a zillennial.
Yeah. I don't know how to push causes like this online anymore. I'm just too old. If you're one of those and for an E people on social media who have been aggressively posting and abusing hashtags to bring attention to getting a new season of that show, please tell me how it works or share your resources with us and help push for Fena and Fooly Cooly and these other shows on Adult Swim Canada. That'd be really cool. One other note about Adult Swim, this is a little side note. In the U.S., you may have heard, they have now lost the rights to Family Guy because it's reverted to Disney. And as a result of that, FXX has now inherited those Fox shows that have usually dominated Adult Swim's schedule for 15 to 20 years now. What's funny is that if you look at the FXX current schedule, it's almost indistinguishable from Adult Swim Canada because they schedule it exactly the same way with just these blocks of Family Guy all day and Bob's Burgers.
I'm going to be very curious to see how that all. I mean, this is all the other reason for Adult Swim Canada to try to diversify their bonds, to put it mildly. Maybe they'll have all of those Fox shows forever because of different contracts and stuff. But, Disney's pushing things up here too. And I just would think it'd be prudent.
Well, this goes to another possible telecom merger news with Rogers and Shaw, because Rogers currently owns FX and FXX Canada. The funny thing about those two companies is that for decades they have divided the country up for internet and telephone services.
Yeah.
Like Rogers, well, they've swapped around, but for the most part, Shaw serves certain provinces, mostly in the west. Rogers serves other provinces, mostly in central Canada and the east. And
it is the most blatant. Here are two telecoms owned by two long money families. Yeah. We're talking money trusts and all this stuff. For any of our non-Canadian listeners, imagine, how Viacom's a Redstone thing. Imagine that it was so huge that basically it split America in twain between two rich families. Mm-hmm. That's telecom in Canada with regards to Shaw and Rogers.
Yeah. And
it's terrible. And icing on that cake, Rogers is in the middle of a pissy board structure, which I honestly hope screws up the Shaw deal.
I hope it does too. It's been kind of fun to watch that, but the funny thing is that it's competition-wise, it's not going to make that much of a difference for telephone and internet services because they've divided it up that way.
The only thing it would have any impact on is Shaw, of course, bought Wind Mobile, turned it into Freedom Mobile.
Yeah.
So our closest thing to a fourth national carrier, unless you're rural, in which case gets stopped, would then be, of course, just another Rogers thing.
That's
which, of course, means Rogers would have eaten both attempts at a fourth carrier.
That's what it's all about. They just want to. That's what it's all about. They just want to merge those two together under one corporate overlord. And the funny thing is that
owned by not even like a stock that's like, I mean, if there's publicly traded stock, but in terms of how these things are actually ruled, it's literally family politics. So it's like the worst. It's like, ugh, it's gross.
Yeah. But yeah, so like if the competition bureau were to review it and okay the deal, but say that you have to sell off Freedom Mobile to clinch the deal, they would cancel it, because that's all that it's about, all that it's for. And if it does go through, then we're gonna see Rogers television branch, production branch, or Rogers television branch merge with Corus, and that's going to be super messy. And then you're going to see FXX and FXX Canada under that Corus label. So maybe they'll mix things up between those two stations. I'm not expecting to see Loiter Squad airing during the day again, though, on Adult Swim Canada. That's probably not happening. But
which is wild. It's all like, who was Lotus Squad by? Like Tyler, the Creator. Oh, you mean the guy who had like one of the best-selling rap albums the past year and who won a Grammy for the album before that? Like just all this, incredibly notable musician. You had one of their TV shows. You could just run it wherever. Yeah, we don't want to run that.
Yeah.
Goofy.
Interesting that most of the black-led shows seem to have kind of disappeared from Adult Swim Canada too. Oh yeah. But they're running Super Dave Osborne in the mornings now. They're getting a little more creative with their CanCon, I guess.
Man, Jesus.
Yeah. They're running on also Rick and Morty Uncensored for the second.
Give them that.
That's cool, I guess. But yeah.
Well, and it's also at points it means that we have dropped. Didn't we have some sort of runaround where they accidentally dropped the uncensored version earlier before the U.S. version had ever aired?
Oh,
the recent episode.
Probably. Oh yeah, right. Yeah, they on Video on Demand they released a Rick and Morty episode early, I think. That was cool.
Yeah.
It's always fun when that happens.
Yeah.
As long as no one gets fired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're listening to this, you got fired. I'm sorry to hear that, but thank you for screwing up.
I think the only other thing I wanted to talk about, and I don't even know if I really feel like talking about it, is the new communications bills that are coming through. You may have heard of Bill C-10. We haven't talked about it. Well, we talked about it when it was sort of in the planning stages. We haven't talked about it on the show too much since the bill was actually passed in Parliament, because this has been kind of a weird thing that conservatives have jumped on, in a way that's not really cool. But those bills will be back, and I mean, I guess some people might be wondering if it's going to affect anime. I don't think it will. I think anime is going to completely slip under the radar with this, personally.
Is Funimation even, I mean, it was one thing, it was two separate things. That definitely going to slip under the radar. But even as one monolith, are you really going to chase something just because Sony owns it? I don't know.
Well, it's worth noting that a larger, like a more detailed version of the bill has been kind of circulated online. It includes a list of services that might be reviewed that could theoretically be reviewed for regulation under the new bill. It had stuff like Shudder and Acorn did not have any anime services listed at all.
To be fair, I never see an anime service advertise, whereas Acorn constantly advertises on over-the-top streaming services, linear.
Yeah.
Like every other ad is going to be like Acorn, don't be an idiot about COVID, occasionally politics, which is hilarious. I can't remember what I was streaming Gravitation at first. It was during the election season, and it was just hilarious to see ads for the conservatives. They have clearly no idea where their ad buys are going. I'm like, no one watching this is going to vote
But yeah, I think that even at worst, I think Funimation like might be reviewed for regulation if they were regulated. They probably have to pay into the media funds. Unpopular opinion, I think they should pay into the media funds. I'm not going to lie. I don't think they're going to be required to exhibit Canadian content or anything. I don't think anything like that's going to happen.
I also feel like there would be a real, like, the loophole that you can always try to drive the truck through is saying, all right, we'll pay into the media funds, and then to get our money back, we'll throw some dubs at Canada because we've technically already, in the budget, then it's already rinsing.
That's a fantasy as far as I'm concerned, and I don't think that'll happen.
Also, I have no idea what's going to happen with, that gets back into where does Funimation, how do they structure themselves as they consume all of Crunchyroll's stuff? That's going to be its own interesting.
Yeah. But like,
man, are they gonna have like Funimation Expo now? Like in a few short years.
The branding is the big question. Like, obviously for the platform, Funimation is gonna absorb everything. But I think, is that platform, is it gonna be Funimation or is it gonna be Crunchyroll? I don't know. We'll see. I think they're gonna. I don't think the Crunchyroll brand is gonna go away. If they eliminate the Crunchyroll brand, frankly, they wasted their money because. I don't know. They're going to lose subscribers over that.
Yeah, but they still would have eliminated the competitor and bought all of their content. So they didn't waste their money. They just didn't get the most.
They paid way too much for it. That's a lot of money to pay just to eliminate your competitor.
But you also got X-Arm.
Anyway, for this Bill C10, well, it won't be Bill C10 anymore. But yeah. Also,
that's how they get you, by the way.
Yeah.
They just keep changing the number to try and make you forget that it's the same shit.
Like High Dive and Retro Crush, they're absolutely they're gonna completely slide under the radar.
And Well, I mean, and weirdly, I feel like High Dive now more than Retro Crush. I feel like Retro Crush is somehow kind of like come around the outside to be more compelling. It's really weird. I guess that's the advantage of just like picking up everybody's classics and leftovers is you can just be like, hey, this is a pretty deep library really quick.
I think we're going to leave it there for today. Pleasure as always. Thanks for coming on. Where can everyone find you online?
You can find me online on most platforms at Karl R. Olson, KarlRolson. You can find my music under the name Ultraclystron, which is just going to be hard to say, but I'm sure Siri will make it work if you ask, on all major platforms. And that's kind of about it. I don't think anybody cares about seeing my very empty GitHub page. So.
All right. And thanks for tuning into Zun in Canada. You can reach me on Twitter @jbetteridge or email zunincanada@gmail.com. The theme song is by Ultraclystron and can be found on his album Packet Flood, which you can find at ultraclystron.com. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast app of choice. See you again.
Bye, everybody.